So thank you very much, audience, for joining in. We present to you Debjani Ghosh, from who heads NASSCOM in India. And as I said, my one-liner suffices in terms of the introductions. I don't want to belabor that. She is an SPJIMR alumnus of pass out of 93. I'll say that proudly because I'm from the first batch, and 1980, 93. She's 90. I'm 83. And she's one of the few individuals in India who's followed by the Prime Minister himself on Twitter. And she's been awarded several awards as a woman leader. And today we'll hear from her journey and the learnings that she's had as part of that journey. So with that very brief introduction, over to you, Debjani, with your initial talk. Then Padma and Vaishali will jump in. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And so I was asked by my friend Jagdish to talk about my journey, the industry, and India in 15 to 20 minutes. So bear with me. I'm going to race through this and try and get some of the key points discussed. And I really look forward to your questions. But before I start, congratulations, good quarter. In this kind of a pandemic, in this kind of a situation, I am just so thrilled with the way our industry, our companies have been performing. So huge congratulations to each and every one of you. So I'm going to start this with my journey a little bit, because a lot of that applies to what I do today and how we are working today. I'm not going to bore you with a whole lot of details, but just some of the key turning points in the journey, which played a huge role in shaping my values, beliefs, and therefore has a huge influence on who I am today and the work that I'm doing today. So I joined Intel in late 1996, December 1996, a non-engineer. I'd studied economics, pol science, and an MBA, marketing. And of course, a woman. In fact, at that time, my family, other than my father was tremendously excited about it, but my family thought I was absolutely crazy doing this because I had other options. I had marketing in consumer good firms and, some great companies, etc. So I remember one of my dad's friend in Silicon Valley called up to tell me, listen, I'm just going to give it to you straight up. This is a ruthless industry, and you are going in not just with one hand behind your back, but two hands tied behind your back because you have the wrong experience and the wrong gender for the tech industry. So it's like a double whammy. So think twice before you get in. But I had made up my mind that I would be joining that company, and that actually had nothing to do with technology. The reason I decided I was so hell-bent on joining Intel is a story by itself. When I walked into the Intel interview, for the first time in my life, I saw another woman on the other side of the table. That was the first time I met a real woman leader in person who was on the other side of the table. Her name is Deborah Conrad. She's still a friend, still a mentor. We stay strongly connected. And she was at that point the head of marketing for Asia Pacific. And she had come down to interview because Intel was hiring a marketing person for India. And I was so fascinated when I walked into the interview. I forgot all the butterflies in my stomach. I forgot the nervousness. And I took over the interview and I started asking her all the questions about how did she make it to this position? What did she do? How was working at Intel like, etc., etc. And I know it was like a 1 hour, 15 minutes interview, of which I must have talked nearly 45 minutes or 50 minutes. I must have asked the questions. So, I later on, when I did get the job, I was very surprised because I honestly had not, I just thought I was not going to get it because I didn't give her any time to ask me any questions. And much later, I remember asking Deb, what was the reason you hired me? I hardly let you talk. I mean, other than answer my questions. And she said, because I saw raw ambition, and hunger in your eyes. And it is so important for people that we bring into the company to want to grow in the organization, to want to do something bigger, and because then you can groom them. And that's what I saw in you, and those words I will never forget. And every time I hire today, that's what I look for. Does the person have hunger? Does the person have ambition? Because I just think it is so critical. But all was not hunky dory. Once I did join and I started getting to understand Intel, I started getting to understand people. I realized that I stuck out like a very, very, very sore thumb in the company. I I was a non-engineer. I was one of the very few women Intel had. In India at that point, I was the only woman other than the lady who worked in reception, etc. And it really hit me when I went to US for my induction, because everybody was an engineer, and the language around me, forget Latin, forget Greek, it felt like I had reached Mars and the aliens had invaded Earth. I just couldn't understand the jargons, I couldn't understand the words. And for someone who is very ambitious. I mean, who used to be and continues to be ambitious, and ambitious because I strongly believe that if I'm going to commit my life to something, then there has to be a path ahead for me, the path to grow. I'm not doing this as a hobby, I'm doing this as a career. And I absolutely want a career that gives me the opportunity to grow. I wanted to be the next Deborah Conrad at that point in time. And I was very worried that there's no way I'm going to grow anywhere in this company because I just don't understand it, and I stick out. I just don't fit in. And a chance meeting over a cup of coffee changed that perception completely. And that chance meeting was with a person who some of you may know, the legendary Andy Grove, who was a co-founder of Intel. Just an amazing, amazing, amazing person. And I've met so many leaders. There's nobody who comes even close to Andy. I mean, he was just so different. Um, Andy, being Andy, was sort of walking around, bumped into me in the cafeteria, newbie, said, "Come, let's grab a cup of coffee and tell me how you're doing." And I blurted out that, this is a great company. I told him why I joined. And I said, I think I made the wrong choice because I just don't fit in. And in a very Andy-ish way, for those of you who have seen his videos or heard him speak will know what I'm talking about. He had a very unique way of speaking. So in a very Andy-ish way, he tells me that when you are the only person in the room who's different, all eyes are on you. Everybody else is a little curious about you because they don't know why you're in the room. You have two options. One, you can duck for cover and hide from all the attention, or run out of the room because you're not comfortable with the attention. Or two, you can seize that opportunity to stand out and ensure that you leverage that attention to the fullest. That advice changed my life, because since that conversation, I have never ever felt um, bad or felt worried about not fitting in. In fact that I didn't fit in, my difference became my biggest strength. And that has become the mantra with which I have lived, I mean, pretty much my entire career life till now, and pretty much reason for the journey that I've had at Intel and whatever success I have achieved at Intel. If I can sum up that entire journey that I had at Intel, I think I would sum it up by saying that I would describe it by saying that it was about uh, it was about being comfortable with the uncomfortable. That was my journey. Everything around me was uncomfortable. Um, having to learn the lingo, having to learn about technology, having to fit into that time a pretty much male dominated space, everything about me was uncomfortable. uh, when you learn to embrace your differences, when you learn to start seeing your differences as strengths and not weakness, you start getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And for me, that's when the magic happened. The moment I started feeling very comfortable with all the chaos around me, all the confusion around me, uh, that's the best gift I got out of that journey. The 21 years I spent at Intel, I owe Intel a lot. I learned it's a fantastic company, tremendous mentors, tremendous people, and I learned so much from it. But the one big takeaway I have is the gift it gave me of being comfortable in extreme situations, being comfortable in the uncomfortable. And today, when I think back, it taught me that situation um, taught me a few things. It taught me that pretty much everything can be learned, no matter what, as long as you're willing to burn the midnight oil. But there is no such thing that you cannot learn if you put your mind to it. For an economics graduate, being able to learn silicon technology so that I could stand up on stage and give presentations at all our chip launches. Um, who would have thought it even possible? But that's what I realized. If you really, really put in the hard work, you can learn whatever you want to learn. The bigger the problem, the higher the chances to make a difference. So don't. In fact, if you put me in a situation where everything is hunky dory, I'll start getting panic attacks after a while. It really will start worrying me. The, at Intel we had a saying that it's a lot of my performance reviews have that said about me, that when there's a fire in the house, she's one of those people who run into the house and not away. So find the biggest cat pile, because that's where you can make the biggest difference. That was what it taught me, that look for the problems, and I think that has really helped. um, it taught me learning never stops, because you master something and the next day there is something else to learn. So it's and even today, and I think that will go on as long as I live. There'll always be something new to learn if I want to stay relevant. And last but not the least, um, it taught me that our future doesn't get shaped by some force out there. It gets shaped by the actions we take today. And as we find ourselves today in the midst of this raging pandemic, it is these lessons that come to mind as we try to figure out what is the road ahead for the tech industry and India as a tech hub, as a global tech hub. I do believe that this is absolutely an inflection point for the industry. um, we don't have a choice, because change we must. We don't have the choice of saying we are not going to change. I think by now we all know that the old is not going to come back. uh, how we used to work, how we used to live, how we used to play is not going to come back. It's going to be very, very different. The future is going to be very, very different. So we have to change. And I guess the only choice in front of us is, do we change faster than competition, or do we wait? Because that's what's going to determine competitive advantage, and that's what's going to determine who are going to be the leaders and who are going to be the followers in the after COVID world. Um, I don't doubt for a minute that we are in a very, very difficult situation, both as individuals, as companies, and as a country. We're in a tremendously difficult situation. It is one of the worst crises we have ever faced. But again, we can feel sorry for ourselves and wait for things to come back uh, to what it used to be, which unfortunately is not going to happen, or we can start getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. This is where we have to figure out that, and this is where what I learned at Intel really comes back to me. Everything can be learned. If we have to change our behavior from something as simple as saying, from now on, we have to wear masks when we go out, or social distancing, or the companies have to start changing how they work from remote working to customer engagement. Every behavior, new behavior, can be learned if we put our mind to it and if we invest time and effort in it. We know that. We know it can be learned. We know that we have some big problems to solve. So bigger the problem, bigger the impact. So it depends on how big a problem that we are able to find. And we know that our future is going to get created by the action we take today. Yes, when and how we find the cure, how effective the vaccine is going to be, of course, is going to have a say on the future. But a large part of the future will also depend on how we as companies act today. And there are four things that we as NASCOM believe are going to be the key building blocks of this new norm or this new future that we are going to create. We are going to create the future. The future is not going to happen on its own. We are the ones who are going to shape it. How we act today is going to shape it. And there are four things that we believe are going to be critical for that future and for Indian IT to seize the leadership in the new norm. And these are four questions that I ask every CEO and every leader that I talk to today. First, how trustworthy are you? Is your company? Are you, your employees, do your employees trust you enough that they know that you will do the right thing for them, create a safe work environment, and come back? Do your customers trust you enough to believe that you will do the right thing, keep their data safe, keep their work safe, even in this remote working environment? How trustworthy are you? I believe that in an economy, in a world which is going to be largely contactless for a very long time to come, trust is going to be the currency of this new economy, of this new world. So if you do not have trust as individuals and as companies and as nations, pretty much have nothing to play with. So trust is, for me, is number one. Second, talent. Do you have the right talent? Are you doing enough to build the right talent in your company for the future jobs, for the future skills, for the new opportunities that the future will create, that the pandemic will create, because the crisis, the pandemic will create an explosion of opportunities for companies, but only those companies that are ready to seize those opportunities. So, do you have the talent, the attitude to do that, the culture to do that? Is your focus on innovation led by technology, or is your focus on innovation led by people? I believe the latter is going to win in this new future. It's not going to be about how cool your innovation or technology is anymore. That's my personal belief. I believe that what's going to be really cool is how big a problem are you solving? How much of a difference or impact do you make to your customers, whether it is companies, whether it is people? The services and products that you are creating, are they considered to be strategically essential for somebody's survival, or are they nice to have? And I think that's what's going to make the big difference in a new norm where budgets are going to be, resources are going to be limited. You have to be in that category where you are considered to be strategically essential for somebody's survival, whether it's a business or life. And our company is getting there. And last but not the least, how quickly are you moving? Are you ahead in the game of your competition? Are you lagging your competition? I think trust, talent, people first innovation or people led innovation, and agility are going to be critical for success in the new norm. Whatever the new norm looks like, it'll depend a lot on what we today. But if we as an industry can act on these four things, I believe that Indian IT will emerge stronger and as a leader in the new norm. And I believe the same for the country. And this is the discussion I'm having every day with the government, that this is an opportunity for India to really rewrite the India playbook when it comes to technology. In order to be seen as a hub, we have to be seen as a global hub for talent, for innovation, and we have to be seen as the most trustworthy partner for the world, whether it is for data, whether it is for services, solutions, whatever it is. But we have to be seen as the most trustworthy destination, as the most trustworthy partner, because that will make a big difference in the new norm. And I'm pretty excited with the way the government is responding, I have to tell you. A lot of good discussions going on. There are a lot of great ideas being floated out there. One of the ideas that has really, really caught my imagination is the platformization of India. It's a fantastic idea. You know, how do we build out national level platforms across each and every vertical? And with 5G coming into play, I think it's the right time to think of these bold moves and figure out how do we put these in action. So I'm going to end here. I mean, that in short is a little bit about the journey, the values, how these values, how I'm applying these values to the future, and how we as NASCOM are building the priorities for the next 12 to 18 months. I strongly don't believe in thinking beyond 12 to 18 months, because the world might will change on us and be completely different again. So for the next 12 to 18 months, if there is one priority for NASCOM, it is to ensure that we work on this framework of trust, talent, people-led innovation, and agility to ensure that India and Indianity emerges much stronger from this pandemic than what we were when we went into it. So with that, I am ready to take questions, if any.
Yeah. So while you were
Sure.
talking, CP and Jagdish have joined. So has your 1 year senior Prahlada Rao from Mahindra and Mahindra. So and already it's a hit show. We are at close to 400. So one of the thank you for making this a hit show. I'll pause here and let Jagdish, CP make their comments.
Hey, thank you, Debjani. And I think while you described your journey of Intel, you spoke about the priorities of India Incorporated. I don't think they are NASCOM priorities, they are India Incorporated priorities. But what I wanted for my colleagues to hear from you is, number one, all these years that I've known you for your exuberance, your energy, your capability to surround yourself with happy people or make them happy. Where do you get that from? I mean, is it your father? Is it your mom? Or is it the nomadic you? I mean, I'm just trying to get, something which all of us can learn from you.
So a little bit about my family. So I was born into a joint family where I had 12 older boys before me. I was named lucky number 13, and I was the only girl that came into the family. And my father and my mother, if you meet them, CP has met my mom. A lot of people in those days used to call them raving lunatics because one, they believed their daughter could do anything that the boys did, if not the same, but better. And two, my dad had a job, he was an engineer, and he used to travel on projects from country to country every 3 years. And he decided that the best learning for us kids would be to travel along with him. So we would travel all over the world. So I would change schools every 2 years, 3 years. I've studied, and I don't know how many schools, learned how many languages, etc. So CP, for me, uh, being with people, uh, surrounding myself with people, and there's no point in being unhappy. So I love to surround myself with happy people because life is too short to be unhappy. Well, it was sort of the norm because I was going from place to place literally every 2 years, new school, new friends. Um, One, I could get into a shell and hold myself back from making friends, or two, I could figure out a way to embrace people, embrace the change, and basically just get comfortable with what was happening around me. And I chose the latter. And the other thing, I think from an Intel perspective, what I learned was um, you can't have all the skills by yourself. It's not possible. So it is very important to surround yourself with people who have the skills that you don't, and then figure out how to work with them, so that you can create the best results. And that has absolutely been the philosophy. I mean, I have absolutely, I have no blind spots on what are my strengths and weaknesses. I know very well. So I do try to reach out to people who have strengths that I don't, and I love working with them.
So tell me, uh, between you and your mom, you have now stayed together for 4 months at a stretch. Is your
Separate
mom
rooms.
is your mom willing to kill you or regret the day you were born?
No, we are both very busy people. I am busy with my work, 7 to 8 calls, meetings every day. So thankfully, I'm tremendously busy with my work. She is busier than me. She has an extremely hectic social life, which now happens on Zoom, and she's addicted to games. So she's a gamer, by the way. She's 80 years old and she's a gamer. So we
Because
have
I
very
was very
separate
worried
lives.
because
We
that
meet
1 hour
at
I
the dinner
spent
table.
with you and her, it became very clear that you love each other, but only for a few hours at a time.
Yes, absolutely. We are both very strongly opinionated people.
Hello. Anyway, thank you for coming. I'm going to check out, and for everybody's benefit, Debjani is family to us. Uh, she gets along more with my daughter just to prove that I'm an older guy, and and I mean I'm okay with it. I'm not holding that as long as she tolerates me. So to a large extent, I would say that I continue to learn from Debjani, and so thank you, Debjani. I enjoy my interactions with you.
Thank you, sir. And for those of you who keep asking me, why did I join NASCOM from Intel? The answer is CP Gurnani. He convinced me to do this, and I'm so, so, so thankful he did, because NASCOM's the best thing that I could have done. Absolutely. So thanks for that, CP.
चल मैं तो इसीलिए आया था यहाँ पे अब मैं जा रहा हूँ हो गया चलो Krishna Gopal, Jagdish, and all the lovely people. I'll catch up with you guys and enjoy Debjani. Grill her a bit. I mean, she never got ragged because economic students don't get ragged. So now rag her.
Yes.
Sure, sure, sure. So Debjani, thank you. Thank you, first of all, for changing the time and agreeing to talk to us.
Jagdish, sorry, I just love how you took that mantle on very quickly when it came to ragging.
No, I have a point to make because she almost rags us in all our NASCOM meetings. And that's one of my questions to her, that, one of the things that people, I think, look up to people like you, and this has got nothing to do with woman or man, because I don't want to make this a woman leadership type question or session. It's more about how we perceive ourselves and what we continue to be as our limitations or can't do. Okay. And I think you told about the 12th story, and I was telling Padma, the great friend of mine, and I was telling her that, when you moderate this, do ask her, because that story is my connect with her about sports. And that story is about you being an umpire on a regular basis. And I can almost see that happening. Exactly what I did to my cousin sisters whenever they came home for summer and told them that tum ball pheko, main bat karunga. And they all the time they did that and they accepted it until someone like you stood up and said, why can't I play cricket? So, my question to you is, you deal in NASSCOM with a bunch of alpha males, okay? And I'm not one of them for sure, as my colleagues will tell you. But what would your advice be? Because most people sort of feel a little overpowered by saying these guys who are constantly, in the face and have run companies or organizations and have a view and an opinion which is very strong, and you can feel as if there's a little more overpowering. But I have seen you operate, and I've seen you work through this, whether it's in my finance committee or it's in my NASSCOM role. Will you give a few nuggets to our guys on how do you handle it?
So see, to start with, I'm a tremendously opinionated person myself, right? So, and Jagdish, you know that. So, and I do not apologize for it, right? As long as um, I have a point of view and I know that I could be wrong, that's absolutely okay. I could be wrong, I could be right. But as long as I have a point of view, I will not shy away from making that point of view. And I appreciate that about others. I absolutely, in fact, I don't get intimidated by somebody who is a strong speaker, be it a male, because you said we have alpha males. We also have a lot of alpha females. I mean, Rekha Menon, Nivruti Rai, Sindhu, I mean, they are not wallpapers by any means, right? They're all alpha females. So I actually appreciate the fact that when someone has a strong point of view, they care enough to make themselves heard, to be heard, to speak up. I would rather have that than somebody not speaking up, right? And as long as we are willing to listen to alternative points of view, as long as we are willing to admit if we made a mistake or if we are wrong or if somebody has a better point of view, we are willing to admit to that. So collectively, we can figure out what's the best course of action. Um, I think these healthy debates, or what I call constructive confrontations, are very good to have. Um, so I would, and I'm very comfortable with it. So I will always, I would much rather have a lively debate uh, rather than having a room where everybody nods their head and says yes, because then you're not going to have any new ideas. Be it the NASCOM EC or be it my team. If everybody says yes to what I say, God help us.
Agree. This one I have to agree. So I'm going to let Padma take away and take the session out. But again, thank you very much. I know how busy you are. And I told them that she had to juggle a lot of meetings to get this going, including probably some innumerable government discussions that you do for us as an industry. So thank you very much for that. And Padma, all yours.
Thank you, Jagdish. And thank you so much, Debjani, for joining us. And I loved your talk. I think it answered a lot of the questions that we had. So thank you for doing that. I'm going to ask you one question about, you joined the IT sector in the early 90s or mid 90s. I joined late 80s, actually. But this was a time when the IT sector was a very non-glamorous career choice, especially for an MBA. So how have you found that change? Because obviously now it is a much more glamorous field to be in. It seems to be where everybody wants to come. And how did you see that change and the inflection points occurring?
So I told you why I joined, right? By joining Intel had nothing to do with Intel or technology. It had everything to do with this lady called Deborah Conrad. I was just completely taken in by her. I wanted to be her. And I felt that if she, and that was when I was questioning her, that's what I was asking her, is when did she join and how did she rise in Intel? And her story was fascinating. And I felt if Intel is a company where a woman can rise through the ranks, then that's the company I want to be in. Because definitely, I remember in my first interview with Deborah, the only question she asked me, I think, not only, but one of the few questions she managed to ask me was, where do you see yourself 15 years from now? And my answer was, if I'm with Intel for 15 years, then I bloody well need to see myself at the top. I want to then manage India. I want to run India. And lo and behold, I think in 13 years, I did come back to run India. And she reminded me of it, by the way, when the job was announced. She was no more my manager. She had actually left Intel by then. But she sent me a message and said, "Remember, I'd asked you about this in your interview." So I was lucky because, one, that's the reason that I joined. Second, the charter that I was given was very different. My goal, if you remember, Padma, at that time, computers were not a household item in India, right? They were available in offices and maybe colleges, not even in schools. My job, the charter I was given, was to figure out how to make computers a household item. That was my first project at Intel. If you remember at that time, the PC ads used to be all about configurations, RAM, CPU.
That's right.
Now, as a family, as a mother who would make such buying decisions, you didn't care about CPU speeds and RAM and etc. etc. But that's all that computer ads used to say. So we created the first ever outside US campaign in India, and I launched this initiative called Project Vidya to position computers as an education tool, and talk to parents. And I remember working with companies like HCL, Compaq, etc. at that point to run these weekend PC mailers all over India, like carnivals where families were invited to come with kids and experience the PC. So for me, the company, and I'll give credit to the company, they leveraged me and my strengths to the fullest. I wasn't a technology person, but I loved technology, and I could talk technology in a way that non-techie people understood it. So they leveraged that strength to the fullest. And from then on, the jobs kept changing, and I started getting more techie. And somewhere we realized that I have the flair to work with government. So I was given the charter to start Intel's global education program. I always chose those areas where I could play to my strength. Um, and I found it very glamorous even then, because I just loved what I did. So I found it tremendously glamorous even then.
Okay, Padma, I just want to read out a question that has come so that the audience also, and then you can carry on. Ravi asked a question: how does Indian IT compete against the captive centers in India of its customers, considering that they operate in a similar model without the overheads that Indian IT organizations have?
Yeah. And I think this is a very good question, Ravi, and this is something we debate about a lot. And I think ultimately it goes back to your ability to innovate and your ability to offer a value to your customer that cannot be derived in house. And it's going to be extremely important for companies. And I think this is going to be a pretty defining moment for the industry, especially IT services, as we figure out what should be the differentiator, because this is going to come up again and again. In fact, I think the Economist just came out with a huge article on this saying, will IT services decline if companies are going to invest more in building their captives? I honestly think this is a chance for IT services to figure out how to pivot, figure out what is the work that captives can do the best, and what is the work that services can do, and how do you differentiate that? And it's a hard one, but this is something we have to spend. I don't have a ready answer, but this is top of mind for us. And we have to spend a little time to think this one through. But I do believe that, especially in the new normal that we are seeing evolve, it will be possible to find that differentiation, but we have to be creative about it.
Okay, we just have 18 more minutes, so I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that Deepak gets a chance.
Yeah, I
Vishali
will
gets
do that, Casey. I will do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just had another question for you, Debjani. I mean, you talked about the fact that you were playing cricket with your brothers. It resonates a lot with me. I did the same. I was playing cricket and football and gilli danda with them all the time. I think it gives you a very different perspective on life. But it probably also helped you to become that comfortable in an uncomfortable situation, etc. Now, given that what the world is going through right now with the pandemic, etc., it's really business unusual all the time, right? It's not, and like you said, you're not comfortable with business as usual. But what are the tips that you could give people about going into a situation like this where it is uncomfortable, it is completely new? How do you very quickly get to grips with what needs to be done and then go about doing it?
I think this is a fantastic question, but I think this is the time to invest in yourself above all. I think first of all, invest in yourself to keep yourself safe. I mean, that's rule one. That's the first priority. That invest in yourself. Wear your masks, maintain social distancing when you go out, etc. But invest in yourself to keep yourself safe. Care enough about yourself and your loved ones. Second, this is the time to invest in your skills. I strongly believe, and the one feedback I have for government again and again is, if India should have a national priority, a job one, it should be reskilling. This is the time when we need to ensure that we are reskilling ourselves for those new jobs, new opportunities that are being created by the pandemic. It's going to be absolutely critical. So follow your passion, follow your interest, but figure out where that passion and interest is going to take you. What is, I mean, there is no end post anymore, but the path that what will the path look like, and what are the skills that's needed for success in the path. And I'm not just talking about technology skills, I'm talking about communication skills, I'm talking about leadership skills, because leadership itself is going to go through an immense change in this crisis. This is the stress test for leaders. In a situation where your employees are working remotely, I don't know why we will need managers anymore, because you don't need someone to supervise, but you need leaders. You need leaders who can inspire people to put in their best without having to clock in the time and without having to say I'm working this many hours, but still are inspired and committed enough to give it their best. So how do you bring out that best in people in this kind of an environment? I mean, everything about the way we work is going to change. And are you investing in yourself enough to build those skills? So the other end of the rainbow, you are seen as a value added player that can actually contribute to the change the company itself has to go through or the business has to go through? Or are you seen as baggage? So those are the two choices.
Sure, thank you. In fact, I think the skills is a very good segue to then go into Vaishali. I have both Vaishali and Deepak who are part of NASSCOM Skills Council. I mean, the NASSCOM councils. Vaishali on the Skills Council and Deepak on the Engineering R&D one. But I'll hand over first to Vaishali because what you said about the skills, and maybe she can ask a question, and then Deepak one.
Thanks, Padma, and thanks, Debjani, for reiterating that reskilling is one of the key agenda, and talent is going to be the currency. So my question is that future skilling platform, I think this is one of the cool platform we have seen for the new generation, where everyone can be a learner and everyone can be a trainer. Like, we can keep sharing it in a formal, informal way. It's a brilliant platform, I would say. So with COVID, we are seeing that the lines between the other industries, like maybe healthcare, retail, construction, manufacturing, and ITES sector, those lines are getting blurred now. It's everything is IT driven, everything is digital driven. So are there any roadmaps of taking future skills beyond ITES sector? And what's the roadmap, including some of the non-technical skills, as you rightly mentioned, the leadership or critical thinking, people-led innovation? Are there any plans for that?
So the latter is already done. If you visit Future Skills platform today, you will find that apart from technical skills,
For some reason, there's a noise. There's a problem on the voice. For some reason, I don't know. It must be the internet. Just start speaking again. Maybe it'll be better. I don't know.
Can you hear me now?
No. At least my end, it's bad. I hope it's only my end. Everybody else.
It's actually it's bad all over. Somewhere, Debjani, the voice is kind of as if it's vibrating in a long distance radio. It's the I mean, I'm sorry, I always offer this solution to everyone, which is called, I call it the Bajaj scooter solution, which is, can you log off and log in again, please?
Yeah, I'll do
There's
that.
one more shorter solution. Maybe for a minute, if you could just switch off your video as soon as the voice gets
Let
over.
everybody switch off the video. Maybe that will help. That's first. Let's try that. Except Debjani, of course.
Does that work?
Not as yet.
I'll just log off and come back.
All right.
Or
Thank
you
you.
switch off your video now.
Everyone try going on mute once, please.
No, mute का सवाल नहीं है. Debjani, can you try now? I'm sorry.
No, I think she's coming back on, so she's just
Oh,
going
she's
off.
coming back. Okay.
Katie, your voice is very clear.
No, all of
Rest
our voices are clear.
No, I thought Jagdish and Padma both had a lag.
We did okay.
Oh, Padma was fine. Jagdish was fine. This suddenly happened. It was fine so far.
Yes, it was. It was, yeah. In fact, I noticed something when Vaishali was speaking, and I thought it might be the audio at my end, so I switched off my video at that time.
Does this work?
Yes, much better now. Thank you.
Yeah, it's much better. Yeah.
Jagdish, we have to tell Sameer. This
Video on
only
as
happens to me on WebEx. I don't know why. We have to get Sameer to fix it.
We have to only tell him that next one is going to be on Teams.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I'm
very
using
fine.
Teams and Zoom all day long, and I never face this problem. So,
Would you
Vaishali, to your question on future skills, we already have a host of professional skills available in addition to the technology skills. So, communications, project management, design thinking, leadership, there's already there. I mean, we've already moved what we call from STEM to STEAM. And we are now working with the government. The government has invested in a major way in future skills so that we can create a B2C platform, which we call Future Skills Prime. We are working on it, and that'll be ready for launch closer to end of year. So that will make future skills available to anyone in the country who has some sort of technology background and wants to learn these skills. Be it they can be a student, they can be a banker, they can be a doctor, or whatever.
That's great. That's great. So Padma, if
I'll ask Deepak. Yeah, Deepak, would you like to ask a question of Debjani?
Yeah, thanks, Padma. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Debjani. I think this is a very interesting session. I miss our interaction during panel discussion. I've recently joined ER&D Council at NESCOM. During your talk, I could see that many inspiration sites, but I would say the one which is something which is very strong in mind is comfortable with uncomfortable. So I think that's the one. We'll take one of your line take forward that get shaped for new normal. Past normal is past. So in that context, I could see that NASCOM is going very heavy on taking India as a preferred destination for global investors. And this time we are going global. Many buyer-seller meets which are being planned, including the summit as well, going global. So let me try to have your views on two areas. I'll go one by one. One on scaling innovation. So somehow this is my perception, and that there is a fair degree of fear of failures, either individuals or as a collective for corporates. And a small startup has its own business challenges in current, I would say, current environment to really scale require. Now, just want to hear your thoughts on just like a CSR, like corporate responsibility. Can innovation be a corporate responsibility as a kind of a program? Today, it's like more of a choice. And can it move to a kind of a responsibility and then move as a habit? So just any thoughts on that? Because this could be like, you just thought of some platform and all that. That might be some technology platform, but this could be a different kind of platform as a kind of from the nation, and what kind of government roles possible?
I actually don't believe innovation is any more a choice. I think innovation is a basic survival essential. If you're not innovating today, you're anyway going to die. There's no way you can succeed in your business if you stop innovating or if you do not innovate. Um, can more be done in innovation? Absolutely, more can be done. And I talked a bit about it. I think in the future, what's going to make a difference is how big a problem are you solving with your innovations? What difference are you going to make? I think for the next few years, with the global recession, companies are going to be defined by, are they strategically essential or are they nice to have? I mean, their products and services. And if you can innovate so that your products and services are considered strategically essential for a business, you are going to not just survive but do well. And if you cannot innovate enough to do that, and you're going to be considered nice to have, good tech but nice to have, most probably you are not going to grow or you are not going to survive. And that's the message that I have for every CEO, be it an entrepreneur or be it a large company CEO, that where are you positioned and what changes are you making to make this happen? Because I honestly don't believe innovation is any more about the coolest technology. I really believe innovation is about impact, about the difference you can make, about to lives, to businesses, and that's how you become either essential for a business or you don't become essential for a business. So, see, for innovation, what's going to be critical is, they're linked, is to ensure you have the talent, and also you have, it's easy to innovate. I mean, look at the difficulties companies face to just file a patent in India. So how can you scale innovation in India when it is so difficult to protect your IP? So there are policy level changes that's needed in the country for innovation to become. Now, most of these captives coming in do not file IP in India, but we want IP in India. I want every company to be creating IP in India, because that's when real innovation will happen. And it's going to be extremely important to ensure talent exists, the policies are changed so that people can uh, create IP and protect IP in the country. And there's a market for innovation. We have to work on all three to make it happen. I don't believe that doing a CSR kind of effort is going to cut it. I think it has to be a strategic business imperative. That's my opinion.
All right, let me bring in one question from the audience again. Srinivas Boinapalli asks that, we are the largest consumers of YouTube, Facebook, Google, etc. Why can't Indian companies make products? Where are we lacking? Even Chinese went ahead and created something locally. What is lacking in India?
I think the push was lacking, but now we have the push in pretty much overdose with the banning of the Chinese apps, especially TikTok. For those of you who are following that space, if you look at what's happening with Chingari overnight, and the kind of downloads it's getting, the kind of content it's creating. I'm part of a government group that is looking at new Indian-based apps and solutions in areas like video conferencing, etc. And it's amazing to see the kind of innovation that we are seeing come up. What was missing, as I said, I think our policies are not very innovation friendly, and that has to change. And the government is paying heed to that. I think we will start seeing some changes in that space. And there has to be a market for innovation. We have to buy the products that are created in India. We have to open up our markets to buy these products. And all of these things are definitely being looked into. I won't say India cannot do products. We have companies like Freshwork, Zoho, Tally, which has shown that India absolutely can create products successfully, and not just India products for India, but products for the world. Problem is we haven't been able to have 1,000 tallies and 1,000 Zohos and 1,000 fresh work. And I think that's where creating some of these policy changes, building a market for these products will finally swing the pendulum. I'm hopeful. Let's see.
Deepak, I think you had another short question, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So Debjani, I think that's what essentially I was coming to, that innovations are happening at different pace in the time, and there is a little push right now, but I think somewhere we are missing a big scale, So that was a point I was trying to drive. And same thing on the scale of talent, of course we have talents, but the way, the world after COVID is moving, uh, we do see that, the whole globalization would open, of course, short term. There are some regionalism and self-sufficient within borders kind of emotions and the policies at the moment. But what my question is that, again, scale, which I'm talking about, what's your view on initiative, again, expanding this talent into the tier 2, tier 3 kind of cities, again, lot more on the infrastructure by the government. And it's not about the skills actually. It's the second point is, again, creating those mindset to co-create. So in fact, now it's a very recent discovery with the COVID that majority of the corporates have just realized that, of course, by compulsion, that remote working is a reality and efficient too.
Yeah, so the question was about taking talent to tier 2, tier 3 cities.
That's right,
Yeah, I mean, it's a big, huge priority. In fact, that's one of the discussions that government brings up every time. And when Future Skills Prime gets launched by end of year, because it's an online platform, we're really hoping it'll take the training to the smaller cities, especially now with remote working becoming about people working from their residences. And a lot of them are in smaller cities, smaller towns, even villages. Not just talent, but also having the basic infrastructure in place, like internet connectivity, etc., in these places is going to be absolutely critical. So, as you might know, NASSCOM is leading an effort with the government. There's an interministerial group formed across ministries to look at the future of work and what will that mean for India, where remote working and what that means, especially the impact it can have on smaller cities, is a key discussion point, and what needs to change to enable that. So these are all top priorities right now for both NASSCOM as well as the government.
Fantastic. And I just want to chip.
Question. Sorry, there's another question from one of the attendees who says, given the, how do you rate the security preparedness of India, given the exponential digital growth that is taking place and in fact accelerated a lot by COVID as well?
That's the one I worry about the most. I think we are taking steps, but I don't think it's enough. So I absolutely worry about that. And I think that is one area where we have to see significantly higher investment by our companies, by startups, and by government. Because I did talk about trust, and I talked about how if you don't have trust, nothing else matters in this world, in the new norm. In order for you to build trust, I think investment in cybersecurity is going to be absolutely critical, because that's the only way people are going to trust you, if you show that you have secure systems. And that's the one, of all the things, that's the one I worry the most about. By the way, I saw.
Yeah. Sorry,
I just saw a question on chat. I think Deepak saying, if China can become the factory of the world, can India become the talent hub, or what? I'm paraphrasing him. I absolutely agree. I think my push with our Prime Minister, IT Minister, and everyone is India has to make digital talent its biggest competitive advantage. So I hope that happens fast.
We've got somebody from your alumnus,
Padma,
which is
I think we are at 8:32.
Yes.
Thank you so very much, Debjani. We generally kind of we went a little overboard because you had a break in between also, and we thought we'll have a little bit of compensation of that and have a couple of questions. So very, very invigorating, rich session. We learned a lot. Audience attendance was phenomenal by any standards, and I think the panel did a good job asking a lot of questions. Any last word, Jagdish, and then we'll kind of wind up.
Oh, my only suggestion would be Padma's asking one last question, if that's okay with
Okay.
Debjani, we'll get that question going.
Prahlad Rao.
And,
I was just going to let
Debjani,
Prahlad.
would love to have your camera switched on. I think the network's fine, if that's okay with you.
Okay. Sure.
We've got Prahlad Rao, who's also from SPJ. So I thought, I'm sure he'd like to say hello to you.
I was 1 year junior to you. We did cross some classes together. Dr.
I hope I didn't drag you, and if I did, I'm very sorry.
Very, very sweet to us. Very nice. Hearing those. I work on the other side of the business, which is the auto and the farm side. So I just asked a question which we can deal with later, which is about confluence of both technology and people like us who are in the manufacturing. How we can look at this confluence to be the next order, because I think we are uniquely placed in that kind of an opportunity between Mahindra and TechM. So that was something that I wanted to kind of seek some views, but it's okay. We can talk about it later.
Sure.
All right. I think with that, we'll bring the session to the close. Thank you very much, Debjani, for agreeing to be a special guest on this show today. Thank you, audience, wherever you are in the world, for coming in this big numbers and making the show so very special. Thank you. Good night, good evening, good morning.
Thank you very much. And all the best to you all. And congratulations once again on a good quarter. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Debjani.
Thanks. Thanks, Jagdish. Bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.